Welcome back. It's now time for data points. We want to reflect on just how much members of county assemblies make during their work at the assemblies. Of course, you remember their work is to legislate, to oversight the county executives, and at the same time to represent the people from the ward. So let's take a look at what the guidelines of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission say. There are 4 categories of members of county assemblies. You could be a speaker, you could be a deputy speaker, you could be a majority or minority leader, but you can also be an honorary member of county assembly. That is an MCA generally. And also there's a separate subcategory of persons that are also chairpersons or vice chairpersons of committees. We'll be talking about that. Now, a speaker has a basic salary of 322,000 shillings. They get a housing allowance of 80,000 shillings every month and a market adjustment allowance of 134,000 shillings. That comes to a gross salary of 537,000 shillings every single month. On top of that, they may receive some allowances, especially when it comes to questions of chairing a committee, because they also chair certain committee within the House. A deputy speaker has a basic salary of 139,000. You see the drastic difference between speaker and deputy speaker. Remember, a deputy speaker is also an elected member of a county assembly representing a ward. So the basic salary is 139,000, housing allowance is 60,000, and the market adjustment allowance is 32,000, giving a total of 231,000 as the gross pay for that deputy speaker. For persons that are majority or minority leaders, meaning they have leadership roles in their assemblies, they get a basic salary of 114,000, a housing allowance of 50,000, 26,000 is the market adjustment, giving a total of 191,000 before any other allowance can be considered. For an MCA who is not a leader of majority, is not a deputy speaker, just an ordinary member of the House, they get a basic salary of 92,000. The housing allowance is 50,000. There's a market adjustment allowance of 11,792 shillings, giving a total of 154,481 shillings. Let's see what else they get as they do their work. Their committee sitting allowances that they may receive. So should that MCA be a chairperson of a committee, let's say a committee on finance and planning, so they'll get an allowance of 6,500 shillings per sitting, and that can be a total of 104,000 shillings monthly, meaning a maximum of 104,000 shillings for the chairperson. For the vice chairperson of that committee, they get an allowance of 5,200 every meeting they sit, but it is capped at a maximum of 83,200. And a member of a committee, meaning you're not a chairperson, you're not a vice chair, you're just a member of the committee, you get an allowance of 3,900 every sitting you attend, and that is gets to a maximum of 62,400 as per the guidelines of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. What else do you need to know when it comes to members of the county assemblies? They have a transport allowance. For the speaker, they get an official car of CCs not more than 2,000, and it's for the period that they are working in that institution. For MCAs and the deputy speaker, remember, a deputy speaker is also a member of county assembly representing a ward. They get a car benefit of 2.2 million shillings. This is a motor vehicle reimbursement of a car that is not exceeding 1,800 cc. Should they decide to get a more expensive car, then the excess amount, it is them that are supposed to be taking care of that. They also get a car maintenance allowance of 30,167 shillings every month. So that is car maintenance allowance. It is different from the mileage. Let's take a look at the next slide to show us what more they get when it comes to transport allowance. There's that mileage allowance claim, which is 1 return journey every week. So, of course, you have 52 weeks in a year. So you'll calculate at the rate of 77 shillings, 35 cents per kilometer. So depending on the distance between the county assembly itself and the ward of that MCA. So that's how you get to that. And remember, it is return. So if it's 45 kilometers from the county assembly to the ward, times 2, that is 90, one trip per week, times the number of weeks, divided by 12 to get what the monthly allowance should be. So in this case, the minimum is 30,167 shillings every month for mileage claim, but it can go to a maximum of 147,481 shillings every month. And of course, this is based on the distance to the ward from the assembly. What's more, in as far as the benefits for the members of county assemblies, so this is a model payslip for an ordinary MCA, meaning an MCA who is not a leader of majority, they're not a deputy speaker, and they are not a chairperson or vice chairperson of a committee. So the committee allowance, remember, the maximum is 62,400, and the gross salary at the start is 154,000 shillings. So should they attend all the committee meetings of that month, a maximum of 62,000. The car maintenance they will receive is 30,167. The mileage claim, if you're assuming that they come from the nearest ward, whose maximum is 30,167. Airtime, they also get an airtime allowance of 5,000 shillings every month. The total comes to 282,215 shillings, and this is way before the daily subsistence allowance or the travel allowances, should they travel within the county or within the country or even outside the country, which will not be part of this. It will be a separate consideration. What's more, if you have to talk about an MCA who gets the lion's share or the best that there can be in a county assembly. So this MCA, assuming is a chairperson of the committee, let's take an example of the finance committee. So this person will get a maximum of 104,000 shillings. Remember, the gross salary is 154,000 shillings. They have a duty allowance for being a chair, which is 26,000 shillings for those duties. They have airtime allowance of 5,000 shillings. They have car maintenance allowance of 30,000. And let's assume that the mileage claim is at the maximum, which is 147,000 for an 81 every month. So this MCA is going to get a total of 467,129 shillings before taxation. This is according to the guidelines by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. What's more do you need to know when it comes to these state officers? They have a special duty allowance. I just mentioned that for the chairperson. But if you are chief whip, a deputy majority or minority leader, you'll get a duty allowance of 29,000 shillings. If you sit in the speaker's panel as an MCA, you'll also get some 27,000 shillings as duty allowance. If you're deputy chief whip and other whips, then you're going to get 26,000 as the duty allowance. For a committee chairperson, they get 26,000 shillings also. And committee vice chairpersons, they get 23,000 shillings per month. What's more, when it comes to annual medical cover, so these are benefits that also accrue to members of the county assemblies. For inpatient, they get a maximum of 3 million shillings, and this covers the MCA, the spouse, and up to 4 children who are below the ages of 25. Outpatient is 200,000 shillings. Maternity cover is 100,000 shillings. Dental cover is 50,000 shillings, and optical cover is 50,000 shillings in a year. But the rates are different for let's say a speaker who gets a car loan of 4 million shillings, a mortgage of 20 million shillings to get a house, and airtime per month. Airtime allowance is 10,000 shillings. For MCAs and deputy speaker, they get a car loan of 2 million shillings, mortgage allowance of 3 million shillings, and this loan is given to them at the rate of 3%, but recoverable within the period they are in the house. The airtime allowance for MCAs and deputy speaker is 5,000 shillings. So you can see how that compares. But if an MCA chooses to take the car loan and the mortgage together to buy a house or to buy a car, the maximum still is 5 million shillings. That is 3 plus 2 million shillings. You cannot get both once you take a 5 million loan. What else do we know about these state officers? They are asking that they should be put at the same level with the county governors. At the moment, county governors are getting a basic salary of 574,000 shillings. Remember, the MCAs, an honorary MCA is getting a basic salary of 92,000 shillings. They want to match the governors. The gross salary of a governor is 957,000 shillings. Of course, they also receive an official car of 3,000 cc, which is taken care of by the government, and medical cover of governors is up to 10 million shillings inpatient. Compare that to MCAs who are getting an inpatient cover of 3 million shillings. And then travel allowances, they will receive based on the SRC rates as and when need arises, that is when they travel. And that's how it looks like when it comes to the questions that are being raised by the MCAs who want to match the county governors. But you can see that even though they are saying they're being underpaid at about 80,000 shillings, they have a chance to make as much money as close to 500,000 shillings, depending on their responsibility. And all that is before their travel allowances. That's data point for this week.